love to. Let's see, why is this telling me? Oh, it's just giving me. Okay.
Want down?
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and start. Okay. All right, Eli, go ahead and put up the first slide, and we're going to get started in about 30 seconds. And people will keep dinging for a few minutes as everybody logs on. For those of you just logging on, please put in the chat where you're from. We'd love to see where everybody is from. They're coming from all over the place. Simone is here from Stockholm. Welcome, Simone. So we're not just US and Canada now, we're all over the place. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and we are recording. And this is 11 months we've been doing this now. And I want to welcome everybody. We have a lot of new people here again today. And we have almost 400 women who've taken part in these bi-weekly sessions since last March, which is pretty amazing. So today we have Soania Mathur, MD, who will be speaking. And I'm not going to do an introduction because she's going to be telling you her story. And Eli, if you can take off my slide and then go back to the gallery. Okay. Let's see. So she's going to be telling her story. I know that a lot of you have heard of her. She was diagnosed in her 20s, just out of medical school. She had 2 young children, and she is one of the founders of Pediaventures, which we've talked about before, and she will be talking about that as well today. So I am going to let her talk about herself because I think she can tell you more. She's going to tell you her journey with Parkinson's in a much better way than I can, because as you know, it's personal for everybody. And I'm going to turn it over to Soania right now. We're going to change our screen to speaker view. And I'm going to ask everybody to mute yourself. And what we're going to do is, if you have questions, put them in the chat. And we're going to open up for questions pretty quickly this morning. So if you have questions, we will be going through them, and we will be forwarding them to Soania. So with that, Soania, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for inviting me to come today. I love getting together with a group of women. I think we have a different perspective on this disease. It affects us differently. That's biological as well as, just life experience is different. And I learn so much from these conversations. So I'm really happy to be here. I guess I'm going to share my screen then, Sharon.
Yeah, I have to make you a co-host.
Okay.
Which I think I just did. Shoot, it didn't do it. Hold on.
Okay.
No, okay. It won't let me do more than one co-host at a time. So I'm going to take myself off as, how am I going to do this? Oh, here we go. Okay, there. I was clicking the wrong thing. Go ahead. Okay, now you have it.
Let's see if I can. Oh my goodness.
Okay. All right, while she's getting her pictures, Soania is from Toronto. I don't know if I said that before. So she is also suffering from the cold like most of you out there. And we hope everybody's warm and safe.
Can you see that, Sharon?
I don't see, I just see you.
Oh.
Let's see. I can share it. Let me see if I can get into it.
No, let me do it now.
Oh wait, multiple participants. Okay, now try it because I put multiple. There you go.
Yeah, okay. Technology. Okay. It's great when it works.
Machu Picchu. Yeah, Machu Picchu, love it.
Machu Picchu, that's where I was a few years ago. And I think Sharon, you said you had been there as well?
Yeah, I've been there too.
Yeah, beautiful place. I actually spurred a research project I'm working on because my symptoms were much better in Machu Picchu than at that altitude.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody is not muted. Eli, is that you? Can you mute? Everybody mute yourselves, please.
Okay.
Okay, that's better. Yeah, there was too much background noise.
Okay. So again, thank you, Sharon, for asking me to come and speak with you today. These slides I'm going to go through fairly quickly because I think the conversation is more important for us to have an opportunity to discuss points and have some Q&A or share experiences. So I was diagnosed, as Sharon mentioned, probably about 22 years ago. I was 28 at the time. I just finished my residency in family practice and was expecting my first child when I was diagnosed. Not the best or most convenient of times in my life, I must say. And for that reason, I kind of busied myself in busyness. I sort of dove headfirst into my new family practice, which was very busy. I then subsequently had 2 other daughters. So I have 3 daughters. I was running a busy social schedule, new house and all this sort of stuff that I should have been preoccupied with. But there was always this, overhanging, looming Parkinson's diagnosis, which I, again, successfully ignored for a great deal of time for the first 10 years. But then I kind of got to the point where I recognized that this wasn't going to go away. I mean, intellectually, I knew it wasn't going to go away, but actually understood that it wasn't going to go away on an emotional level. And that's when I kind of started to reflect on this disease and came up with some lessons that I feel that helped me to move forward. And I still abide by these lessons, even though I'm 22 years into this diagnosis. So I'd like to share that with you today. Let me see if I can advance. So lesson number 1 for me was acceptance. I think you guys can read it, but it says, for every day for me is an uphill struggle. On the positive side, it's great for my glutes. And the acceptance piece, I think, is really important. As I said, intellectually, I accepted this diagnosis. I knew I had it. I wasn't doubting the diagnosis in that way, but I hadn't emotionally accepted it. It hadn't become sort of part of me. And I began to realize that I wasn't going to wake up one day with the symptoms all gone, that I needed to sort of deal with it and make it part of my life so that I could move forward. Because without that kind of true acceptance, it's hard then to plan ahead, to do all the things you need to do in order to thrive, not to survive with this disease. The second lesson for me was that optimism is a choice. Now, it's not an easy choice. And still to this day, I'm not optimistic every day, but I recognize that this disease was not going to be, I didn't have a choice in the diagnosis, but I did have a choice in the way I was going to face the challenges that this diagnosis brought into my life. And I could choose either to be pessimistic or could be optimistic about my future. And that for me has been a real game changer, I must say, because I was getting mired in the glass being half empty all the time. I felt I was too young. I was too busy. I wasn't enjoying life anymore. I wasn't getting the joy out of my life that I used to get. And that really started to affect me and change me into a person I wasn't happy with. And that's when I sort of realized that the true human power is to choose your output. So you choose your reaction to any given stimulus. And that choice of optimism, I think, has been very important in my life. Lesson 3, it's all about quality of life. As you know, unfortunately, we don't have a cure yet for Parkinson's disease. And until that day comes when we have a cure, and I say until that day comes because it will come, it's all about quality of life. It's about what your life experience is like, socially, mentally, psychologically. And for everybody, that's going to differ. For me, it's going to differ from any of you or vice versa. For some, the quality of life goal is to be able to do the housework on their own, or run a marathon, or walk to the end of the driveway. I mean, whatever those quality of life goals are, whatever you need to do to improve your life experience, that's what you have to concentrate on. And you can't do that without a support team. And that support team, I mean, we're not islands unto ourselves. We do best when we're surrounded by people that have our quality of life goals in mind. And we've communicated that. So your support team can be anywhere from your movement disorder specialist, your neurologist, your primary care physician, your physiotherapist, your occupational therapist, your social worker, your counselor, your speech and language pathologist. Whatever issues that you have in order to optimize your quality of life, you need to build that support team, and you need to be in charge of that team. And that's where this comes in. You must be an active participant in your management. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that you can't be a passive bystander and expect to live well with this disease. You have to take control, not just in terms of building your support team, but in terms of controlling those variables that we all have control over. Not the diagnosis, but things like self-care, which includes nutrition and exercise and stress management and sleep. These are things that we can sort of control by making lifestyle changes in a way that is helpful for us. And that will help us live better with this disease. And this is where you need to become educated. And events like this are really great, Sharon, that you put on, because that education is key. I mean, attitude is everything, but education is power in this disease, as it is in many. Learning about your disease, the symptoms, what are the potential side effects of the medication you're on? What are research projects that you can get involved with? What are the sort of up and coming support systems that might be out there for you? Education is key so that you can also communicate with your physician in an educated way. Because, you know, I don't know what your experience has been, but a lot of times you go into the doctor and they sort of, you know, fire off a few questions and you might not feel like you have actually gotten your points across, or you actually haven't told them what you need to improve in your own condition. And if you can become educated about those issues, then you're able to better communicate with your physician and your medical team in general. Focus on your abilities. This is a bit tongue-in-cheek. We're all allowed to whine. I whine myself on many, many days. But what I meant here is I had to learn to start to focus on my abilities, not what this disease took away from me. Because as Michael J. Fox has said, this is a gift that keeps on taking. And it is. It's a gift in many ways, but it does keep on taking on a daily basis. And if you get mired in the negativity of focusing on what you've lost instead of what you still have, or maybe even what you've gained through this experience, I think that can be a very powerful lesson, and has been for me. You are not defined by your illness. This was me definitely a few years ago. The doctor saying, I'm afraid you have what's known as children. And, you know, just like we shouldn't be defined by our children, which we all tend to, or I found early in their lives, we shouldn't be defined by this illness. We can't take on that label of being a patient or sick or unwell or unhealthy. We need to remember that we are much more than that. We are mothers, we are wives, we are partners, we are daughters, we are friends, we are, you know, co-workers. We're an inspiration for a lot of people. And if we keep ourselves focused on our illness alone, then we really don't enjoy the rest of the aspects of our life. We don't allow us to experience all the other things that life has to offer. We just become sort of unifocal in terms of our focus. And this has sort of been the biggest lesson of all. You have to let go of your fear of the future in order to begin living your present. And again, just to quote Michael Fox, he says that if you worry about something and it doesn't happen, then you've worried for nothing. If you worry about something and it does happen, then you've worried twice. And I think that's a valuable lesson. I think we don't know what the future holds for us, any of us. I do think it holds a cure at some point, or better treatments anyway, better quality of life. But, you know, we have to live for ourselves every day and not focus so much on what is to come. These are a couple of books that I've written for children. The first is My Grandpa's Shaky Hands. That's a book that is geared towards toddlers. So grandparents often love this book to read with their grandchildren. And the other one is Shaky Hands, A Kid's Guide to Parkinson's Disease. And that one I wrote with my daughters. That's a little bit more for school-age children. And that's available. They're both available on Amazon if you want to pick it up. And all profits go back to the community. I don't keep any of it. It's just some of my follow. I have a website that has videos and educational material as well as blogs. And this is sort of my family and some pictures I've picked up. So what am I doing now? I'm 22 years into this. I stopped my medical practice probably after about 12 or 13 years of living with this disease. And I devoted myself to patient advocacy. So now I do a lot of advocacy work. I serve as co-chair of the patient council at Fox. I work with Brian Grant Foundation on their advisory board and Davis Finney board of directors, Parkinson's Canada. I do a lot of writing and speaking and those sorts of engagements. So I'm probably busier than I was before, but it's stuff that I'm passionate about. And that really is one of the gifts that this disease has brought into my life, an opportunity to serve the community in a way that I hope I can. And I'm also one of the co-founders, as Sharon mentioned, of Pediaventures, which I will speak with you about that, I think shortly. But I'm going to just stop at this point.
Okay.
And ask if there's any questions before we move on.
We have a couple of questions. Well, one statement from Andrea is live your best today, which absolutely I agree with. And Barbara Bromley asked, as a physician, how do you approach your medical treatment? And what are your thoughts about naturopathic support, such as Dr. Mishley's approach?
I love Lori Mishley. She's great. And I think that definitely I am a very big fan of her nutritional advice and that sort of thing. I think she has a very good understanding and her advice is very good. How do I sort of handle my own situation as a medical doctor? Sometimes it's good to have that knowledge and sometimes it's not so good. Because I went through a period of time when I was telling my doctors what to do and I wasn't telling them the right thing in some ways because I was pushing my medications as much as I could, not realizing or recognizing that the side effects were actually worse than what I was trying to treat. And that's a big problem. So now that I've stepped back and let them do their own thing, I approach it the same way anyone would. I make sure that I have all my questions written down, that I know what I'm going to talk about during the appointment. Preparation for an appointment is really important. And I also, probably the only advantage would be is that I can fiddle with my medications a little bit more, maybe than someone without the background. But other than that, I approach it the same way you all should approach it. And that's being prepared for your medical appointments, being rigid in your schedule of your medications, as well as other lifestyle changes that you make, because routine is very important.
Okay. What are your thoughts about Ayurveda?
Ayurveda, again, I think, even though I'm a sort of Western trained physician, we don't have all the answers in this disease. We still don't know what causes it. We still don't know, how to treat it in a really effective way. The drugs that we're using are over 50 years old, the gold standard medication. So Ayurveda treatment, I would say, I don't know of anything that would be harmful in it. And if it helps, then there's no problem with it. Especially since we know things like natural, like turmeric and stuff like that has the potential to help.
Okay. Yeah, I've been taking turmeric for a while. One of my docs said, don't let this define you. How do you do that? And we all struggle with that issue, I believe.
Yeah, and everyone has to kind of come to their own conclusion of what works best for them. What I did is I sort of conceptually put my Parkinson's in a box and put it on the shelf with all the other sort of boxes that I have. I accept it as being part, it's there all the time. We don't get a break from this disease. It's not like it's only there Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's there 24/7, 365 days. But I try and focus on my other interests, my other skills, my other, roles that I play. Kids are very good reminders of that. I'm not Parkinson's with my kids, I'm their mother. So, they don't cut me any slack because I have Parkinson's. And that's actually a good reminder for me that I'm just not defined by my disease.
Okay. All right, there's a lot of questions coming in. Have you had DBS, or what are your thoughts on DBS?
No, I haven't had DBS. I've gone for the pre-DBS workup, and my thoughts on DBS are, if you're at the point where your medications are not working well enough for you, or you're at the point where the side effects from your medications, especially the dyskinesias, are bothersome and you can't get that fine balance that you need with Parkinson's medications, then it's something to think about. It's all about quality of life. So it's not a necessary thing. It's not a curative thing, but it helps you live a better quality of life and life experience, then Yes, it's important. But again, there are very sort of strict guidelines that you have to go through to make sure you qualify for DBS, and that requires a pretty extensive workup if any of you have gone through that.
Yeah. We had a session in January with 3 women who had DBS, and if you're curious to know more about it, watch the video. It's available through my website. It was a really wonderful session. Okay, next question. A nurse told me cannabis oil helps. What do you think?
Cannabis oil. I can't tell you with any scientific vigor that it helps or it doesn't help, because the studies just aren't there yet. Again, I personally tried the cannabis spray, not the psychoactive form, for sleep, and I didn't find it benefited me, but I've had other people say that it benefits them. So the answer is we don't know yet from a scientific point of view. Anecdotally, it seems to help with tremors and dyskinesias, but that's anecdotal.
Okay. What do you think about taking I can't even pronounce it, mucanapirians if symptoms are minor?
I mean, you could try. I don't think there's no harm in trying. If your symptoms are minor and it helps, then great. I don't know I personally don't know of any studies, but I haven't looked into that in great detail.
Okay, we have one more question here. I'm sometimes afraid of the present. In particular, when I forget something, I wonder whether it's normal or a symptom of decline. Well, I think it happens to all of us. We all forget things.
It does. I mean, there definitely is, there can be cognitive issues with Parkinson's, but a lot of times we fear it so much that we sort of take things that are, like you're saying, normal for age word finding or forgetting, where you put your keys, as being a sign of things to come. And that's natural, right? I mean, because that's what we fear is the dementia side of Parkinson's disease. But there's certain risk factors that would put you in increased risk, but the majority of people don't get dementia. One of the most concerning risk factors is age and duration of disease. But most people don't. A lot of people do have mild cognitive impairment, which can be difficulty multitasking, difficulty sort of planning, following directions, and those sorts of things, some word finding problems. That can happen in Parkinson's disease a little bit more frequently than it would in the normal population. But usually that doesn't affect life functioning or independence. You just have to sort of manage it with, little reminder apps or having life a little bit more structured and having a place for your keys when you come in the door, that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's been a tough year for everybody because we don't have the regular schedules that we had before. We're pretty much at home doing whatever. So yeah, I think everybody's been having those issues this year. So is it decline or is it just today? Who knows? Probably just today. So, okay. So last summer, I got a mysterious email from Larry Gifford, who was a founder of Pediaventures, inviting me to join in a conference call. I had no idea what this was about. I emailed him. I said, what are you talking about? And Larry and Sonia and a few other people put together a group called Pediaventures to stop Parkinson's now. And Sonia's second part of her speech is going to be about Pediaventures. And I know we've talked about it in the past when we had Ray. Now I've lost his name. Doctor from Rochester.
Dorsey.
Yeah, Ray Dorsey, who was fabulous. And he talked about his book and he talked about Pediaventures. But Sonia, it's all yours.
Sure, I'll try and share again.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Oh, I've lost you now. Hold on. Sorry.
You lost me now. Okay, you should still be there. If you can't find it, I will see if I can bring, you got it? Okay, there you go.
Is it there? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's here.
It's good?
Got it.
Okay. We're doing well, Sharon.
Well, that's part of the issue is getting to all this computer stuff, when the brain isn't working quite right.
Yeah, no, I'll use that as my excuse as well. Not just that I'm not good at it.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Use it.
Yeah. Sharon, so you kindly mentioned Pediaventures. Larry Gifford, who's a wonderful host of a podcast called When Life Gives You Parkinson's, he's from Vancouver. He and Tim Haig Sr., who's a advocate in Winnipeg, and myself, Tim Haig Sr. is also the winner of the Amazing Race for Canada a number of years ago. So the three of us kind of got together and co-founded the Pediaventures. It was based off of, as you mentioned, Ray Dorsey. He and Todd Scher of Fox Foundation, Michael Oken, who's a movement disorder specialist, and Bas Bloem, who's a movement disorder specialist in the Netherlands, wrote a book called Ending Parkinson's Disease, this one right here. And it was a book that we really resonated with us. And so we started off as sort of a book club of sorts. And then we thought about, in the back of the book, they kind of give sort of action points on what needs to be done in order to end Parkinson's disease. And we thought we need to have a global advocacy group that can work together, collaborate, bring everyone together, all the key players, and work together to end Parkinson's disease. So what is the Pediaventures? Well, we're a patient-led organization. We don't fundraise. I must make sure you understand that. And we operate in cooperation with all Parkinson's organizations, as long as their missions align with ours. So we basically unite community and organizations, and we work to better the life of people with Parkinson's disease, with the ultimate vision being to end Parkinson's disease. So we add urgency. We add urgency to research, wellness, and advocacy by uniting all the players, so that we're not working in silos. We're not working on our own projects, that we work with each other. So we're not duplicating resources. We're not, duplicating research, which still happens. We're sharing information, and we think that would, save not just money, not just resources, but time. And those of us in the Parkinson's community as patients, don't have time. Time is valuable. We need to speed this process up. Why are we doing this? Well, Parkinson's disease was discovered, or classified well over 200 years ago. And since then, we've done a lot as humanity. We've changed HIV from basically a death sentence to chronic illness that can be treated with medications. We've eradicated polio. We've done a whole bunch of stuff. Yet the drug we have for Parkinson's disease, as I mentioned earlier, is over 50 years old. And that's not right, especially since we've seen the power of collaboration just recently with COVID, right? Everybody got together, all the countries got together, the red tape was put aside, researchers shared information, and we had a vaccine within a very short period of time, several vaccines on the market to help us protect ourselves from the coronavirus. So that there are three pillars to the Pediaventure, our mission statement: wellness, advocacy, and research. Wellness is basically that we believe every person living with Parkinson's should have equitable access to basic therapies and resources. I'll talk to you a little bit more about this, because this one is really very important, I believe. Advocacy, we believe we've been silent for too long, that we must become a loud, uncomfortable, ever-present voice demanding change in how the disease is seen and treated. People in the Parkinson's community are thought, honestly, in the medical sort of realm, to be too nice. I think we are very, gracious. We don't speak up a lot. And that quietness has unfortunately resulted in our needs being pushed aside to some extent when it comes to funding and policy advancement. So we need to focus on that. And research is basically, the patient voice should be involved with research from the beginning, inception of studies, to the completion of studies and dissemination of information of the results. That patient voice to guide that whole process is really, really necessary. So the wellness objective. When I say we deserve the same care, I mean the global community deserves the same care. There are huge inequities of access to medical treatment, wellness treatments, and we need to work locally with organizations to help take action. I've been working on a book with my girls about the sort of global experience of Parkinson's. And I've been speaking with people in Uganda and Cameroon, and the stories I'm hearing are really sad, really horrific in some cases. You know, cases of women with Parkinson's, you know, being in bed for 4 years because they don't have access to cinema, just being in bed for literally 4 years, being shunned because people believe that it's somehow a curse or it's contagious. You know, basic information which no one should have to live without, basic medication which no one should have to live without. And that's a real push for us as at the Pediaventures. Advocacy objective, we want to have a voice of 1 million by the end of 2022. Now, this is a big vision and we may not achieve it, but we want to get as close as we can because there's power in voice. The more people that we have that are supporting a certain issue or certain policy change or a certain educational initiative, the more people we have behind it, the stronger that we will be and more likely we'll be able to attain our objectives. And third, the research. And this is, again, probably more of a passion of mine, but we really need to make patients the driving partners of research. We know what we need. We know what is most affecting our quality of life. And we're able to help drive the direction of research. And then when we get into the research process, we're good at helping to plan clinical trials, for instance. What works for a patient? What will you have? What do you have to do to maintain patients in your trial or have them enlist for your trial? And then afterwards, what information is important for patients to know? How should that information be disseminated? We think that the patient voice is important in all areas and every step of research. So I don't know if this has been updated, but right now we have Pediaventures in about 54 different countries. We've partnered now with 43 organizations, including Twitchy Women. I don't think this is updated.
I'm not on this version. I'm on the next version that came out this week.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
A couple days ago.
Yeah,
no, it's okay. It's okay. No, he's got a lot more. It's about double the number of what's here now.
Yeah, so we have about 43 or more organizations, and we have over 2,500 Pediaventures at the moment. And we hope to obviously grow. I hope that you will consider, consider joining us in our work. Again, please remember that we're not a charity. We're not fundraising. We're not tied to any one organization. We'll work with everybody as long as it betters the lives of people in the community. That's our only stipulation. And we won't over bing you, I guess, with emails and things like that. We send out a monthly action alert, which lists 5 ways to get involved. There's a few things coming up that may be of interest to you. One is Race the Moon. I guess there's going to be a new moon on April 12th weekend, PD Awareness Day weekend. And so we're going to we're partnering with another organization to run a cumulative race against the actual moon of the Earth. So 1.5 million miles is what the moon travels around the Earth. And we're going to try and clock up miles walking, running, biking, swimming, golfing, rowing, wheeling. It doesn't matter, just as long as you're moving, and raise money for local organizations. So you can choose, if your charity has joined, to raise money for that particular charity. It doesn't go to anyone else other than where you direct the funding. And there's another initiative called Together Apart, which is going to be a 24-hour live stream on World Parkinson Awareness Day. The EPDA or Parkinson's UK, I think it's Parkinson's UK, is actually hosting it this year, but it's basically giving 1 hour of time to each time zone for 24 hours. And the people in that time zone, or the organizations in that time zone, can showcase people with Parkinson's treatments and activities in their area. So we're just basically trying to bring the community together, not one organization, but all organizations. And that's where you would sign up if you should care to do so. But I'd love to talk to you about it if anyone has any questions about what we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and put your questions in the chat. I have a couple of questions while we're waiting. How do you get to be a patient scientist?
I think as, do you mean just a patient scientist in general, or There
Or
are.
how do you get involved in the research studies
Oh, okay.
in that way?
Wow.
Yeah, in
I was gonna say
being
everyone who's
on
involved with research is a patient scientist in my eyes.
yeah, no, but
There's different websites that you can access to learn about the research in your area, because we know from studies that most people want to get involved with research, but they don't know how to.
Mhm.
And
But I'm
and that's
talking about being in on the planning stages, like
the
you were
planning
talking about.
stage. Well, that's what we're working on. We're working on, there's things called, they're planning committees or steering committees, or what we're talking about getting patient representation on. Once you become a Pediaventure, we can keep you up to date on that work, but it's really important for people to get on, for the research community to change their view and to recognize that patients have a real contribution that they can make, and that their trial will get recruited faster, their trial will get done because of retention of patients, and it's better. The clinical trial process is better, saves money, studies have shown, because it runs quicker. And so we're working on trying to get patient involvement in all steering committees for planning clinical trials. So if you sign up for Pediaventures, we can keep you up to date on that.
Wonderful. And one other thing I want to say about advocacy, I know in the United States, if you call into your senator or your congressperson, you represent X number of people. And that is how the AIDS people got medications pushed through. They got their agenda pushed through very quickly. Was they all got together and really had their voice heard in Washington, because they were so together as a group pushing for this. And as Sonia said, we are too nice. I mean, Parkinson's people are known to be the nicest people around, right? So we don't push, but we need to be pushier. We need to write to our Congress people. By the way, there is a Parkinson's interest group in Congress, and if your congressperson is not a member of that, make sure they are. Write to them, let them know who you are,
Right.
and that's one way you can get your voice heard.
There's also, you mentioned Ray Dorsey. He has started something. He's going to be starting something. It's going to launch, I think, in a couple of weeks, called the Red Envelope Campaign, Red Letter Campaign. And that's where he's going to send, if you request, a red envelope with a postcard in it. And they're basically asking Congress to do three things. One is to increase Parkinson's funding, research funding. The other is to continue to support telemedicine, telehealth, because it increases access for patients. And the third one escapes me right now. It's on the website, Ending PD. I'll send it to you, Sharon. You can maybe.
Okay.
But that's really cool. So he hopes that everyone will send in their red letters, and it'll kind of overwhelm the mailroom and make a big statement.
Yeah. Okay. No more questions. A couple of statements. Well, a few people have signed up for Pediaventures. They want to make sure. How do they check out that they are on there? I give it a couple of days, and you'll look for your name, I guess.
Yeah. Or the other thing is, if you have signed up, you should have been receiving the action alert, a monthly action alert. If you haven't, then something might have gone a bit screwy, and you can get in touch with me or via Sharon, whatever is easier for you, and I can look into it.
And several people have thanked you for moderating your webinars on Davis Finney. They are enjoying them. You motivated one of them to ask for DBS.
Oh,
and so thank you. Any other questions, comments? This is your time, ladies. Okay. I feel the marketing of PD is not a strong positive message. Gee, I have all sorts of catchy bags, shirts, golf clubs, etc. for breast cancer, but would find nothing for PD. I feel like marketing helps. Did you read I wrote about breast cancer versus Parkinson's. That was one of my early columns on my blog, and it's still being read today because that's exactly what I wrote about. I was diagnosed within a week with both Parkinson's and breast cancer. And of course, breast cancer was took precedence, and Parkinson's went, I just went into hiding on for 6 months until I came out of my slumber from radiation. But, you know, I got out there and we did the breast cancer walks, and we got everybody out there doing this and that for Susan G. Komen, et cetera. And it doesn't happen in the Parkinson's world. And yes, we need to be doing that.
I agree. I think it's really important that becomes that sort of, it goes back to becoming that loud voice, loud ever-present voice is what we need to become. But it's hard. It's hard because there's sort of two sides to this. On the one hand, this disease is awful in a lot of ways. You know, it does affect us on all areas of life: physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual. It's progressive and it's incurable at the moment. So there's lots of issues that, you know, can really affect people's quality of life. So there's that side of it, which is important to show in order to be that loud, uncomfortable voice. But on the other hand, we also don't want to necessarily dash the hopes of people in the Parkinson's community. We want to share those success stories. So it's kind of a dichotomy in some ways, where you don't want to lose hope, but at the same time, you don't want to, you know, sort of minimize the effects of this disease, which can be really, really significant.
Sharon and Sonia, I feel people are afraid to say anything sometimes. It's kind of like when you go to a support group, and I happen to be very out there, but there are people you'll say, come to my support group, and they're like, oh no, I don't want to see what the future has. But if we don't become stronger advocates, then we're not going to change the future. So we need to get out there and make ourselves known.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a stigma attached to it that most of us fight at the beginning. I mean, it's tough. Let's see, here's another one. I feel the way PD is depicted on TV and literature is not accurate. Gee, what a concept. How do we combat that?
Well, I think that would be something that we would look at in terms of advocacy with the Pediaventures. If there was something that came out that was really off-putting or off-color, then we would address that. And that's where the numbers come in. If you have 1 million people telling some media company that this is not appropriate and this is not what we feel is right, the right way or the correct way to depict our community, then that has a lot, you know, more power behind it than, say, you know, 1 or 2 of us sending an angry email. So I think that that's where the advocacy role comes into play.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's what one of the women said. The numbers of people with PD is growing, so the word should be spread louder. Absolutely.
It's set to double. In next couple of decades.
Okay. Rhonda, who is from Canada, writes, new to PD, when do you know when you should start meds? I have concerns writing and tremor rigidness will take meds. Will the meds take care of those issues?
Yes. Right. So first of all, everybody's different and you need to see your physician in order to sort of for them to evaluate you. But in general, my general feeling is that if your quality of life is being compromised without medication, there's no harm in starting medication. That having been said, there might be specific reasons in your health to avoid certain medications and take others. But there was a long held belief by the medical community that if you started medications early in your disease, then they would sort of run out of effect sooner, and that you would be left with an inability to treat your disease with medications. We now know unequivocally that that's not true. People go on medications and maybe it seems like it's wearing off a number of years into the disease, but that's just because your disease was progressing, because the medications that we take don't slow that progression down. They just help with symptoms and quality of life. So whenever you feel you're at the point, you should discuss it with your neurologist. It will help with motor symptoms. It doesn't necessarily help with the non-motor symptoms. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that concept, but the motor symptoms of, say, your tremor, your stiffness, your slowness of movement, the micrography or the writing sometimes improves as well. Will go away with dopamine replacement, but not necessarily the non-motor symptoms, which are things like constipation and mood disorders and low blood pressure and the other non-motor symptoms that we experience. But it's all about quality of life, and that's why it's such an individual decision. If you're fine the way you are without medications, leave it. If you feel that you're not enjoying your life experience because of your symptoms, then that's the time to discuss with your physician.
Okay. Any other questions? I don't have any others in the chat, but if you want to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we will see if we can answer anything.
Sharon, this is
I have a question.
Radhika. I have a question for Sonia.
All right.
Okay.
In terms of the non-motor symptoms, what are your thoughts regarding talk therapy, mental health therapy, which is really downplayed quite a bit when you have conversations with your neurologist? Because 9 out of 10, it's that, well, I'll give you a pill and you should be fine. Would you be kind enough to address that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you're referring to is the fact that people with Parkinson's disease, we have an increased risk of suffering from mental health issues like depression and anxiety. That's just part and parcel of this disease. But you're also touching on the fact that it's very multifactorial. That yes, if someone is clinically depressed, then sometimes an antidepressant is necessary in order to get them through the depression, because it's an actual imbalance of neurotransmitters. But talk therapy or counseling is equally as important, because there's a lot that we have to cope with. There are a lot of issues that come up from life in general, relationship issues, coping strategies, and that sort of thing. And that's when the team approach of medications if needed, but definitely counseling can play a big role. Support groups, whatever sort of ancillary therapies that you need to get through it, I think is really important. And I wouldn't discount it. I never believe that there's like a gold pill to solve everything. I think you need a multidisciplinary approach to get the most out of treatment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of questions now in the chat. Well, one person just, Rhonda says she's been doing acupuncture, which has helped immensely. Glad to hear that. And Sparky says she just had her first experience with acting out her dreams when she kicked out hard trying to escape from someone dragging her away. What do you suggest?
Yeah, I had my first kicking of the pillow, luckily, not my husband, just the other night. Now, REM, sleep behavior disorder, is very common. It's actually one of the prodromal symptoms, meaning before you even know you're diagnosed with Parkinson's, you can look back and people would have experienced this kind of acting out of dreams or vivid nightmares or vivid dreams in general. What do you suggest? First is safety for your bed partner, if there is one, and yourself. So making sure that your environment is safe. And the second thing is proper diagnosis. If it sounds like, if you have a history of vivid dreams and acting out or speaking out in your dreams, that you probably do suffer from it. There are some medications that may be helpful that your physician can prescribe for you, but those are also what we call benzodiazepines, and they can sometimes cause a whole other host of problems in terms of being unsteady on your feet in the middle of the night, in terms of their addictive potential. So sometimes that's not the best thing to do, but if they became particularly worrisome or there were safety issues, and that might be something that they would try.
Okay. Okay, tell us more about the equity and access of carbidopa-levodopa medicine for people of color and or the rest of the world.
Yeah, I talked about Africa, but we have to look even within our own countries. There are communities of Indigenous and people of color that we aren't accessing. They're not the same demographics. The city's demographics of percentage of people with color are not the same that are visiting our medical centers and our PD clinics. That's a real problem. And we are working hard. All the organizations that I mentioned that I work with are all sort of this sort of top of list priorities. We're all trying to access those communities. And sometimes it's a matter of having materials in the right language. Sometimes it's a matter of addressing certain specific cultural subtle nuances that we just don't know about unless we gain the information. So it's a very important thing. And there should be equity for everybody, globally, especially, but even within our own countries, I think we're lacking in that. And the other thing is involving people of color or visible minorities in research. I think we have a lot to gain knowledge-wise if we have a more diverse set of subjects in research. And I think we're missing out on the potential of gaining that knowledge.
Sonia, do you feel telemedicine will open that up a lot though?
I think it will help. Now, I did a webinar last week on health disparities where we were talking with different organizations and that use telemedicine and or the internet in general. And they found that they thought that it would sort of be the equalizer, that everyone would have access to it, but it didn't actually end up being that way because of a number of other nuances like lack of internet services that are fast enough or lack of, computers or laptops and that sort of thing. So there's a whole bunch of other access issues that we have to address. But telemedicine in general, I think, is hopefully going to be something that continues because it's actually good for patients. I think.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Many years ago, I did a study with Dr. Dorsey. It was a telemed study.
Yeah.
Really exciting. He'll always be a person in my heart because I couldn't work through something. And it turned out just by doing a telemed thing with him, he changed my meds and I was like a whole new person. I got rid of, a lot of issues. So telemed is something of the future, I know, but I feel that it definitely has a benefit too.
Yeah, especially during this pandemic, it's been very helpful for patients to be able to access their care.
Sonia, have you talked about minority groups and individuals of color? I don't see a lot of Asian Indian women, first or second generation, in any of my support groups or even on the advisory committee I'm on. Is it culturally the reason?
Well, I mean, I think there is definitely some cultural nuance there. I know for me personally, it's sort of, not now, but when I first was diagnosed, it was very hard for my parents or my family members to accept it, not because they thought it was bad, but because it was affecting me and they're very sort of protective and they really couldn't handle the diagnosis. But I think there's this degree of stigma that's attached to it. And that's unfortunate. But I think that in some cultural groups, there happens to be a little bit more stigma than others. And that's maybe why we're not having the same type of representation.
Especially knowing that we have such a large Asian Indian Physician Association and medical centers, I'm disappointed not to see more participation in the process.
I agree. Something we have to change.
Yeah.
Darlene,
Okay, I have about 4 more questions here. So, have you heard of Cymbalta helping with movement for Parkinson's? And what do you think of CoQ10?
So CoQ10, they've done the studies. One study initially said there might be some helpful, it might be helpful. And the last larger study said that there was no, it wasn't helpful for Parkinson's disease in terms of symptom treatment or disease modification. So, it's expensive. If you want to try it, you can. It's not going to harm you in any way, but there haven't been any studies to support its use. And what was the other one?
Have you heard of Cymbalta helping for movement issues?
No, I've heard of Cymbalta helping for the non-motor mood disorder issues, but not I'll look into it.
Okay. If we feel okay cutting back on Cinemet, should we?
Yeah, that again, I wouldn't make any changes without your physician's knowledge or guidance, but the least amount of Cinemet you can be on to get the best result for you is probably the best thing to do, only because as you increase the Cinemet, as you increase the duration of Cinemet, you risk the side effects, particularly of dyskinesia. And then that becomes a very fine balance because sometimes the dyskinesia is more bothersome than the symptoms of tremor that you're trying to treat in the first place. So there's a very, very fine balance. And that balance varies day to day. That's the frustrating part about it. It depends on how much you've slept, how stressed you are, what you might have eaten, if you missed a dose, et cetera, et cetera. So that fine balance is something that's very important to get. And I would say the lowest dosage that you can be on to still incur that quality of life is what you should be on.
Okay. I have three last questions and then we're going to wrap up. One is frequent night urination a symptom of PD? Number two, what is your exercise routine? And some of the work that Dr. Mishley studies, she studies people who are outliers related to nutrition and exercise, hypothesizing that PD can be slowed or even reversed. And what are your thoughts on that? And if that's too much, I can repeat.
No, I'm actually looking at the chat too now. Is frequent urination, night urination something? Yes, it is, unfortunately. Bladder instability can happen with Parkinson's disease. It's not usually the type of stress incontinence where you cough and sneeze and you leak a little bit. It's usually the type of urgency urination where you kind of have to get to the bathroom or you're going to have leakage. And that is unfortunately a part of Parkinson's disease. So doing things like, limiting water or fluid intake before bedtime is something you can do. Frequent urination during the day and right before bed is something you can do. But it is a problem. And if it gets to the point where it's too much of an issue and you're having it's really affecting your quality of life and your ability to be active, then it's important to discuss with your physician. There are medications that you can be put on, but unfortunately those medications sometimes aggravate Parkinson's symptoms. So it's, again, that fine balance thing that you have to worry about. The exercise piece. If there's any one thing that I could say would be potentially disease modifying, even though we don't have exactly the studies to support it, would be exercise. And it's difficult because exercise is not always the most pleasant for everybody. I mean, I force myself to exercise. I exercise every day. I do a combination of yoga and weights and walking. I don't run, but I walk. And I try to do something every day, at least. And we know that if you can get your heart rate up to, maybe if you can get your heart rate up to, above your normal range for 5 days out of the week, then you're doing a good job in terms of getting the degree of exercise that you need to get. And the best type of exercise is what you enjoy, because that's what you're going to do. And it can be anything from dancing and, walking your dog, or, Zumba, or, yoga, whatever you fancy, because that's the most important thing, is to be consistent as opposed to what the type of activity is, because you need to do it consistently. And as I said, that's probably, even if we don't have the studies to show that it may be disease modifying, we know it makes us feel better. We know that people walk better, their gait is better. Their stiffness is less, their movements are improved, and their balance is improved just by exercising. And that's been known for a long time. So that's an important one to incorporate.
Okay. And the last one was about Lori Mishley's studies about reversing PD with diet and exercise.
Yeah, we're doing an interesting collaboration with Lori Mishley on these outliers. There's all sorts of things that we recognize that happen that aren't really spoken about. Like, for instance, why is it that some people can not walk but get on a bike and drive around? Why is it that some people, myself included, if something's falling and I have to reach for it quickly, all of a sudden I can reach for it quickly and prevent it from falling? Why is it that some people feel better at higher altitudes, lower altitudes? So these kind of outliers are personal experiences. We're putting together sort of a questionnaire to sort of look at that, because as I said, we don't know what causes this disease, and any of these clues could be potentially the clue to give us that information that we need. So Dr. Mishley, in her work, she's very much involved with these kind of outlier and also nutrition and exercise advice, because they're practical. It's practical advice that you can take on without having to, go to your physician.
Okay. There's this, just a comment here from Kimmy Regal. Michigan Parkinson's Foundation has a PD Zoom exercise every day at 10 o'clock Eastern time. So if you want to do that, join in. And I know that Amy Carlson has her Dance with Amy programs on the West Coast in the morning. So there's all kinds of things you can do online to exercise and have fun with other women. Kinesia paradoxical? I don't know. Do you know what that is? She says outlier examples. Anyway,
That Sharon, can you hear me?
yeah.
That's part of what we were researching with like the expression stuff, the idea that in situations that like having to move very quickly, or they say someone with could escape a burning building if they have Parkinson's because of this movement, paradoxical thing about I'm not defining it very well, but that there are certain situations where someone could move or something happens because of an extreme situation. So it was kind of the things that she was talking about. I just sort of, yes, kinesia paradoxica.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, I'm going to wrap it up right here. Eli, can you put my next slide up? And we will, I know a lot of you need to get going, and it's 11 o'clock. We will be on till 11:30, so you don't have to jump off yet. So first of all, I don't know if you can see me. I'm not on the screen. Anyway, we have a virtual tiara, Sonia, for thank you. We want to thank you for joining us today. It's been wonderful. And we hope that you stay on for a few minutes and to chat with those who have more questions or just want to participate, just want to chat a little bit. Next slide. Eli, next slide. Okay, so we have 2 more sessions scheduled in March. The first one is Alone in a Crowd, Conquering Loneliness and Isolation in These Times of Spiritual Distress and Parkinson's Symptoms with Sharon Berniston. And that should be very interesting. And then 2 weeks later, and this is our 1-year anniversary, March 21st, we have Parkinson's, The Art of Expression, which Stephanie Goodman, who just spoke to you, will be talking to us about. And we will be doing some creative drama-based exercises. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we will have a 2-week break because of Passover and Easter, and we'll come back in April. And I'm not quite sure what we're doing in April, but we will keep you informed. Next slide. So as I've said before, we've partnered with the Mayro Foundation now. So if you wish to make a donation to Twitchy Women, you can do so. This will continue to allow us to provide quality programs at no cost. And one of those quality programs we are doing now is our peer-to-peer mentoring program, which someone had asked, several people have asked about. And I am going to send out with this video probably tomorrow. I hope to have the video from Friday when 4 of us were on Parkinson's Alliance, PMD Alliance webinar, talking about a mentoring program that we have started with Twitchy Women. And this is to connect newly diagnosed women with other women who have Parkinson's who can be part of their care team. And it's really been wonderful for those who participated. So next slide, which I think is our last one. So as you see, we are a partner of Pediaventures. This is my contact information. And for those of you who are new today, welcome, welcome, welcome. We thank you. We are now over 400 strong, and let's keep this movement going. Like I said, we're celebrating 1 year in a month. So looking forward to that 4 weeks from today. And with that, we're going to turn off the recording, and we're going to just, those of you who want to stay on, you're welcome to stay on.